Well, hi, Mojo here. Thanks so much for tuning in. If this is your first time or if you're a repeat offender, listener, either way, I don't take for granted the fact that you've chosen to spend time and pay attention to what I have to say. And, pay attention, that's an exchange, right? You're giving me something of value. And so it is definitely my intention to give you something of value in return. I would like to take you today on a little ride in your own time machine. Did you know you've got a time machine built right into your system? We all do. It's a combination of our memory and our imagination. And our subconscious, by the way, can't even tell the difference between the reality, the physical reality, and what we imagine and what we remember. In fact, in our dreams, which is all imagination, often based on memories, our body responds as if it's actually happening to us. So I think there's something to that, right? If that's built into our system by design, then let's take advantage of it. So that being established, I would like you to get into your time machine with me, and I may be going back further than some of you can, but I'm setting my time machine back to the 1970s, late 70s, early 80s, and back in those days when malls were very popular, right, and swap meets and flea markets. During those years, for probably a decade or more, you couldn't go to a mall, a swap meet, or a flea market without running into somebody who was selling what were called stereophonic paintings. You may or may not remember these. If you don't, I encourage you to look them up. But stereophonic paintings basically looked like a whole bunch of dots or splatters, little fine splatters on a big canvas with no particular form, right? Just pretty, but didn't really represent anything except for, maybe remind you of Jackson Pollock on a mini scale. And so at these stereophonic painting kiosks, the salesperson would say, hey, if you look at the painting just right, an image, a 3D image in all clarity will appear, and that you didn't see until you looked at it just right. And I thought, well, that sounds very interesting. I'm always up for a challenge. And so I would stand in front of the paintings and I would turn my eyes left and right, and I'd go forward and backwards, and all I saw were these blots and spots. And inevitably, someone would walk right up next to me, and they'd look and they'd go, look, wow, it's the Eiffel Tower in Paris in the fall. Oh, look, it's the Taj Mahal. Oh, it's gorgeous. It's the Sistine Chapel. Look, there's Michelangelo's paintings. And I'd look at him like, are you a plant? Are you part of this scam to sell me a nondescript painting where I think I'm supposed to be seeing something? And so I can't remember how long it was, but for months, at least a full summer, I would try so hard to see what these people were saying, and I didn't see it, I didn't believe it, I thought it was a scam. Until one day, right, inevitably the day comes, when I walked up to one of these kiosks again, didn't think anything of it other than here we go again, and for whatever reason on that particular day, the salesperson said to me, hey, stop trying to look for what you can't see. Look past it, like let your eyes relax, and don't focus on the canvas itself, but focus on something off in the distance beyond the canvas, and just let it go. So I stood there and I was thinking, yeah, right. And then all of a sudden, sure enough, just beautiful scene, Arc de Triomphe, and the fall leaves and the colors, and it was 3D and it was vivid, and I could see everything super clearly, and I was dumbfounded. I was shocked. I had to tell the person next to me, just like all those people had told me, do you see that? No, I don't see it. What are you talking about? And it's just fascinating to me that I could look at the same painting over and over again and see only a splattering of dots, and then same painting just with slight changes, right, to my psychology and my physiology. Suddenly, boom, this beautiful form would show up. And after that, I couldn't not see it, right? Once I had seen whatever that image was, I could walk up to any stereophonic painting, and within seconds, boom, I could tell you exactly what was hidden in all those dots. Well, that whole experience really strikes me. It was such a profound revelation of sorts that even to this day, it's a vivid memory that I bring into this present right now. And I think, to me, it's such a beautiful metaphor, representation to what I would call the spiritual reality of our life, of living, is that the physical realm, the physical world that we live in, our bodies, the planet, everything that we can see and taste and touch, all of the things that we experience with our senses and process, those things are the dots of the canvas. They're very visible, they're readily visible, and anybody can point them out and see them, but there's something there hidden in plain sight, I like to say, and that is the deeper, or perhaps the more vivid realities of life. But the thing is, when you search for them, well, certainly if you don't search for them, you're not going to see them. But sometimes even when you're searching for them and you're trying really hard, all you see is what you see. You only see what your senses tell you. And there is something truly transformative when you have that experience, that transcendent, inspiring moment where suddenly you are aware in a profoundly real sensation that you've never had before, and you see or feel or sense or even hear or touch or feel touched in a way that has nothing to do with the physical reality. There's something that just shows up that was, I would say, hidden there in plain sight, that was there all along, but suddenly I saw it. And even with the stereophonic paintings, when I would look really hard and I would stare at the canvas, I saw nothing. But it's when I followed those instructions, right, to just stop trying so hard, look past the painting, relax your eyes, unfocus, and suddenly it came into view. And I have to tell you, from my own experience, that is the way I have experienced what I would call God and some would call universe or source, right, or the creator, is that I've had these profound interactions with something divine, something way beyond just the natural realm. And I can't explain it. And I can't ask somebody else to say, hey, do you see it as well? I mean, I do, but they say, I don't know what you're talking about, right? Because they have to have that experience for themselves. And I gotta tell you, now that I have experienced that several different times in my life, I can't unexperience it, right? The other metaphor that I think makes sense in this discussion is, again, if you take your time machine and you go back before the era of digital radio tuners, which again, some of you that are listening, that's probably before you were born, but you can Google it, you can find the pictures. It used to be, back when I was a kid, when you got a radio, AM, FM radio, before anything was streaming, of course, there was a dial, a tuner dial, and a needle that went across this scale, had some numbers on it, and you turn the dial and the needle goes across, right, looking for the signal, looking for a station that was at a certain frequency, a certain megahertz or whatever it was. And if you turn the dial real fast, all you heard was white noise. Nothing, right? If you slow down a little bit, every once in a while, you get a little bit of a signal. And that was usually a sign you're getting close, right? And so then you back it up and you slow it way down, and suddenly you could hear kind of voices off in the distance. It's kind of unclear, and then when you got right on the right spot, the right frequency, you had to dial it in ever with the fine tuning. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, right, there's an orchestra or a band or a live radio show or a drama or news or whatever it was, and it was clear as day. It's as if you were right there with the broadcast, which may have been come from any part of the world, and you're right there in the midst of it, hearing and feeling and experiencing what is being broadcast. Now, think of that. Think of what that means. The broadcast signal was there all along. The radio didn't create it, right? All the radio did was tune into it. So, white noise, going fast and forth, back and forth, nothing. Still, all of that signal, all the broadcast is live. It's coming to the radio. The radio doesn't even recognize it, right? Until it slows down, pays attention, listens carefully, and then dials in ever so carefully to the right frequency. And when it's aligned with that frequency perfectly, a whole world opens up. A world that was always there. The signal was always there. It was just invisible, right? Hidden in plain sight. But when the radio dial was dialed in, then the radio was picking up the signal and could project it so that I could hear it, so that I could be a part of what was going on in this invisible realm. Again, pretty clear to me this is a metaphor for how we experience and interact with the divine, with the supernatural, with the God that created us. It's not that God comes and goes, right? It's not that the divine is sometimes closer to us and sometimes further away. I was taught growing up 3 big words for God: omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. Super big words, and thankfully they broke them down as a kid. Omniscient, knowing everything. Omnipotent, more powerful than anything, most powerful. And then omnipresent, always present everywhere. And I can't tell you how often I've forgotten that since I was taught it as a kid. That sometimes my perception is that God is far away, that he doesn't hear me, that he's on vacation. What's going on? Or, sometimes you see in the news, oh, I saw God in the clouds, or I saw God on a piece of toast, or, Jesus visited me in XYZ way. And I'm just saying to you, and I'm reminding myself, that if God truly is, if the creator of the universe, if the one that is the source of everything truly is everywhere all the time, omnipresent, then he doesn't go further away and come closer, right? That's just my perception. That's my limited perception. He's always there, hidden in plain sight. The only difference is, am I tuned in? Am I listening? Am I dialed in to that frequency, that divine frequency, which is available to me all the time? God is broadcasting to all of us all the time. But are we listening? Are we tuned in to that divine frequency? That's the challenge. That's the invitation, and that's the beauty of it. Science tells us that there's little tiny particles, minuscule, visible particles to the naked eye, but way down there's these little particles, but still in those little tiny particles there's space in between them. In fact, there's volume-wise, proportion-wise, there's far more space than there is particles. That's the building blocks of our universe. Everything's built out of that, right? So that means from the tiniest level to the biggest level, most of the universe we live in is space, right? The space between the particles. And I think that's a sign, right, that God's in the space. God is the space that holds it all together, the energy between the particles that keeps it from flying apart. There's a scripture that says that all things were made by him, all things were made for him, and that all things are held together by him, by God, the source, the creator, which actually is quite reassuring to know that the one who made it all is also holding it together. And that might just be on that magnetic, energetic level that keeps the tiny particles that make us up together is also the same energy that keeps the universe as a whole together. As within, so without. From the smallest to the biggest, God is everywhere. I think there's so much evidence in our time machine, through our history and through our imagination, that brings us back to that specific truth that God is everywhere. He's not ever further from us or closer to us, and that God will reveal himself in any and every possible way, right? He's always beckoning and hearkening for us to see him, if only we will have eyes to see. So it's been said, and I was taught even as a kid, that seeing is believing, right? Old Thomas, the doubting disciple, after Jesus rose from the dead, he said, "Hey, I'll believe it when I see it." And then Jesus shows up, pulls out his hands with the scars, and says, "You want to put your fingers in?" Right? And Thomas falls to his knees and says, "My Lord and my God." But what he says to me that I can really relate to, that Thomas says to Jesus, he says, "Lord, I believe, help my unbelief." Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. And that is the experience that we have as life, as a life form, is that we can believe, but we don't believe perfectly. We see through the glass dimly. And so we can pray as Thomas did, "Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. Help me to see what is there. Help me to stop trying so hard and focusing on the wrong things, and to relax, to let go, and to let you reveal yourself to me in all of the infinite ways that you wish to." So seeing isn't believing. Believing is seeing. To believe is to see, right? Faith isn't based on proof, but the proof certainly confirms what we have believed. all along. So I just invite you again to open your heart, open your mind, open your body to see and experience the God who is everywhere, in you, through you, around you, whom you can never escape, because no matter where you go, there you are, and God is in you, with you. He made you and he loves you. And just ask in a humble, childlike way, reveal yourself. Whoever you are, God, whatever you're like, help me to see what is there. Help me to see you. Help me to see you in me, and help me to see you in those around me, that I may treat them accordingly.